Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Can salespeople be ethical and successful? We'll find out today from our guest, Deb Brown Maher. Deb, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Bill. Good to be here.
Now, Deb, you have a book with a very unusual title, so we're going to start with that because you've got to explain it. Your book is entitled Sell Like Jesus. Where did you get that title, and how did those two topics come together?
Yeah, great question. The title actually came out of my mouth before it entered my brain. It was in response to a comment that my business coach had made. He said, "Deb, you ought to write a book." And I said, I have no idea what I would write about unless it would be Sell Like Jesus. And the book was born in that statement.
You know, it's funny that you say that because so many times, I would say 1 out of 3 guests, they will answer a question and all of a sudden they'll say something and I'll actually reply, that would be the great title for your next book. And It really is. It's the kind of title that if I'm in a bookstore, I have to pick up the book because it's just inviting me in. I have to know why they're connecting the two. And I think Sell Like Jesus is very much like that. People have to say, wait, what does she mean by that?
Hey, what?
Where is that going?
Right.
Now,
yes. So you also asked me, how do you get Jesus and selling in the same phrase, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So I knew the phrase was provocative, and yet everybody looks to Jesus as the leadership example. Well, why wouldn't we look to him as the salesmanship example? It just stands to reason that if he was able to communicate in a way that things are still going strong 2,000 years later, there's got to be something in what he did and how he did it that we can apply to selling. So that's what I tried to do in the book.
Now, I like your sales story, and it's kind of a all-American, if I remember it correctly. So tell our audience how you got started in sales.
Well, I started as an 8-year-old, actually. I made these little loopy pot holders as a kid and had way too many for Mom to use in the kitchen. So I went around to the neighbor ladies and said, "You need a pot holder? 25 cents. And I actually sold out. So I got the bug back then because I experienced the thrill of making money. And even at 8 years old, I appreciated what the money meant.
And who can refuse a cute little 8-year-old girl coming, no matter who it is, to the door? And if the price is 25 cents, I think we can
really.
We can
Well,
splurge
I won't tell you how many years ago that was.
That's all right. We're not asking. But I think if it's priced right to sell and the salesperson is little and cute, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, most salespeople today, are they properly trained? Do organizations just say, here's your hat, go out and tell people to buy pencils?
You know, most of the sales training is around product knowledge and maybe some scripting for how to approach the customer. But for the most part, the communication skills that make for good sales, that really make for good conversation, no matter who you're talking with, are few and far between in my experience. I think the art of conversation is dying as a result of all the ready access that we have to technology.
Now, you mentioned, and it's a good lead-in, about a fundamental skill all salespeople must have. What is that?
Well, I use the umbrella communication skills, but really what it boils down to is being able to ask insightful questions and listen with the intent of understanding. So there's listening and there's hearing. And we often, well, not often, we always hear through our own filters of understanding. So we have to be cautious about that and really listen to what the other person is saying and then ask follow-up questions to get clarification, because even if we just talked about something like the word blue, and I asked you to tell me what's top of mind when you think of blue, what would you say, Bill?
Sky.
Okay. And when I think of blue, I think of my girlfriend whose son died at 2 years old, and his favorite color was blue. So that's what she named the charity. And I was just talking with her. So if you're mentioning blue, I've got this picture of her son, the charity, and I'm not thinking sky at all. So you can see, even though we speak English, we are on two completely different wavelengths over a word as common as the color blue.
And I know if I read an email, a business email, if I read it on 3 separate days, I honestly will get a different view. And sometimes I say, did I actually read that 2 days ago? Because in my mind, I was building up a hate or a love for the other person and say,
Yep.
wait, that didn't say what's in my mind. For some reason, I created a scenario, but it said something else. But now communication is so important. But today, it seems because of the cell phones and people using simply a letter to represent a word, is that getting harder and harder and more difficult?
I think it is. It takes diligent attention to building communication skills. We're not exposed to, for example, when's the last time you were taught the 5 different types of questions? Have you ever heard of that?
No, if I did, it's so long ago that I don't remember.
Right. Yeah. So there are open-ended, closed-ended, diagnostic, challenging, and insightful questions, just to give you the labels. And there are ways of phrasing those questions that correspond with the labels, of course. And each question is designed to get different types of information. So listening skills, we could go off on a whole list of things that keep us from listening with the intent of understanding, like background noise, someone calling, so you hear the phone and you get distracted, like I'm thinking while you're talking and I can't hear you as long as I'm thinking because I'm hearing myself. So there are so many things that can interrupt our ability to focus and truly listen to the person that's in front of us, that unless we're paying attention and we realize it's something that is going to benefit not just me as the salesperson, but also them as the buyer. If we're not paying attention, we're going to miss it.
By the way, Deb, sometimes we think of sales as the lady in the bakery or the guy at the butcher shop. But there's a lot of different definition of sales, and probably
Yes.
those people are more order takers, if we want to be honest. But tell us about someone who might be considering sales. What type of financial future are we looking at?
Well, one of the reasons people think about going into sales is because there can be great rewards. And many salespeople are paid on commission. Some are straight commission. When I was doing sales, I was straight commission. What that means is you get no vacation pay, you get no holiday pay, you get no base pay. You get when you produce. But if you're a good worker and you have the discipline to do the behaviors that it takes, you can make a lot of money.
Define a lot of money.
Anywhere from 70,000 to $500,000, depending on what you're selling.
And I remember someone years ago, now this is at least 20 years ago, he had switched jobs because of the economy and the recession, et cetera. And for some reason it came out. Now this was, I'm going to say a young person, probably about 28 years old, dealing in the mortgage business for a financial institution. He was making over $500,000 a year then. Yeah. And of course, the new job that he had to take was probably 10% because then he was on a payroll. But when he was in sales, $500,000, I mean, most of us never have achieved it, probably are never going to achieve it.
Salary.
We would love to, but so I just want to point out to our audience, sales is not just the person who comes up to you at Jersey Mike's or at McDonald's. The business sales can be quite lucrative and also a lot of fun for people who enjoy that life and are good communicators and follow the advice that you give in your book, Sell Like Jesus. By the way, since we're mentioning that now, I want our audience to know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Deb Brown Maher, M-A-H-E-R. Her book is Sell Like Jesus. And Deb, tell us where we can get the book and a website where we can find out more information.
Yes, you can get the book at my website, which is debbrownsales.com, and also at all, well, maybe not all, most major retailers.
And we'll ask for that information again. And I will tell people, especially because we like these kind of books on the show, it's a short book. It's probably 100, maybe a few pages more or less. The message gets through to you. And if you're running a business, and I'll take it right out of Deb's book, she says, without sales, all businesses will fail. And obviously that's true, because if you don't sell whatever it is, a dentist is selling their skill. An accountant is selling their particular profession. And if they can't get that across to enough people, they're going to have to close up because they're not going to make a salary. They're not going to make overhead expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Deb, you say in the book that we need to simplify and demystify sales. Now, most people would say, oh, yeah, I know selling. That's simple. You go, you tell somebody that's a car, explain the wheels, where the trunk is, et cetera, and take their money. What do you mean by demystifying sales?
Well, I think sales has a negative stigma because we've all had a really bad experience with a really bad salesperson. And all it takes is one negative experience to color our whole perception of anyone that is in the sales profession. The challenge with sales is that, as you mentioned, everybody has to sell. That means that those that consider themselves non-selling professionals, like dentists and lawyers and accountants, they still have to bring in new business. I don't care what you call it. You need new clients who pay you money, as does anyone else that has a business, whether it's a product, a service, or a combination of the two. So another aspect of demystifying sales has to do with you're not born a salesperson. There are specific skills that anyone can learn and be good at sales. Sales is not about convincing people that they have to buy your thing because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's really about helping someone else discover if what you have is going to help them. And you can only do that in a conversation that includes questions that you ask, questions that they ask, and of course the answers that you give.
I almost think when you talked about that really bad salesperson that we all have come across sometime in life, if I was setting up a seminar on sales, I think I would start with 6 vignettes of the worst sales experiences people talked about, just to remind people, because I think we all would start, if I was selling insurance, I'd come out, Deb, you should have some insurance, and I'd tell you 28 reasons why, and an hour later you'd be sleeping and I'd still be talking. And That's example one. And the other one would be the person who just doesn't know their product or is trying to wow you with the cheapest price or something. Deb, when you're dealing with salespeople, you mentioned in your book, and I thought this was unusual, and I want you to explain it, sometimes it's best to avoid certain potential customers. Why do you avoid them? I thought the salespeople were out there and it was almost a challenge. I've got to take on that person even if it takes me 6 months or an excessive amount of time.
There are always ideal customers and less than ideal customers. So the ideal customers have a set of common characteristics that make them someone that you love to work with. Most people in business, when I ask them, what is a good characteristic of a prospect for you? They'll mention someone that pays their bill. And yeah, there's a value set that certain people have, that they will always pay their bill and pay it on time. Not everyone is like that. So just sticking with that one example, if you are engaged with a company and you research them, and yes, you can find these things out, what is their credit rating or what is their business rating? And one of the things that is examined is the length of time that it takes for them to pay their bills. So if you can see, they typically take 60 to 90 days, but you've got a 30-day payment policy, they may not be someone you want to engage with. Why? Because of cash flow. If you end up with too many customers that don't pay you on time, now you're carrying the bank for them, and that's not good. So that's just one example of a reason why you might not want to work with that person or that company.
Now, Deb, of course, the book is Sell Like Jesus, and I think you have 7 characteristics that you mentioned. Can you tell us, you can give us an overview, and we'll talk more about the day-to-day sales, but what are the characteristics that you've picked out that would make us a salesperson like Jesus?
Bill, what I did was I looked at what it was that Jesus did and how he did it, and then I looked at sales preparation, sales process, and sales conversation. So I matched up the characteristics that Jesus demonstrated to those sales aspects. So the 7 characteristics are character, connection, clarity, comprehension, certainty, choice, and commitment. So there's a lot discussed under each one of those, but those gave me a way to relate to what we know about Christ through the Gospels, of conversations that he had that were recorded, and gave me a way to correlate them to the specific sales excellence characteristics.
Now, it's unusual, to me at least, that the very first item you put down is character. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit. In my old high school, we had a saying, character is what you do when nobody's watching. And believe it or not, years and years and years after graduating from high school, I would walk around, and if I saw a piece of paper on the ground, I didn't want to bend over and pick it up. But I would say to myself, that saying, honestly, and I would have to pick it up. It was almost like somebody is out there watching. Maybe it's Jesus, and that's the right thing to do. And it was just lying on the ground at the school or in a public park or something. Pick it up, make it a little nicer, throw it in the trash can. So it definitely stayed with me. Talk about character. What do you mean by that?
So in the chapter on character, I do a deep dive into identity and purpose. So anything we do starts with knowing who we are. And as a Christ follower, I would say whose we are. So I see myself as a daughter of the King. And as a daughter of the King, I need to behave in ways that align with that position. I have to be sure of who I am in order to go toe-to-toe with people who might challenge me. And trust me, if you've been in sales for a half a minute, you've been challenged by a buyer in some way, shape, or form. So if I'm not secure in myself and who I am, and I need to get approval from the people that I'm selling to, I will be destroyed in the sales world. So that's an example of.
Deb, we want to find out more about your book, Sell Like Jesus. But again, at this point in the show, we want to remind our audience they're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Our guest today is Deb Brown Maher. She is the author of Sell Like Jesus. Deb, tell us where we can get the book and the website that you talked about before.
Yes, you can get the book at most major retailers and on my website, DebBrownSales.com.
And for any office, this may be something you want to look into for your staff. It's less than 100 pages, but are they doing these things? Are they guided by these principles? I'm sure you're not going to be against them. They're certainly all solid, good principles. As Deb just told you, it starts out with character. And I think this is going to impress people. I just dealt with someone this week, and I was thinking of you. I said, how would Deb think of this salesperson? It was a item that's pricey, but and I was ready to have a big fight with them. And each time I asked them a question, you could see they were being very sincere. It wasn't the pre-canned, oh, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. Everything will be fine. I'll look into that. Or they told me what I wanted to know, or they said they'd get me something that would explain that. And right away I thought, this is one of your people, because they're being truthful.
There you go.
And at least on their end, unless there's another reason, they made the sale. And I'm sure it's going to be a nice commission for them and everything else, but that's okay. They did the job. They're getting me the information I need, and they gave fair, acceptable answers and explanations. So they knew their subject, and they checked all those little boxes. Deb, you ask a question, or say we should ask this question, why should I buy from you? Or in this case, it would, I guess, me too, if I'm the salesperson. What is the right answer to something like that?
Yes, the right answer is, I would love to have your business, but until I really understand whether we have a good fit between what it is that you need and want and what it is that I can supply, I really am not sure if we should do business together.
And you know what? That honesty, and I didn't know what you were going to say, but that was very much like the salesperson I dealt with. And she used other words. Naturally, she didn't say that, but I could see she wasn't forcing the sale. She was trying to inform me of the information I would need to make a decision, which made me trust her more and more. And because she was an average person, she wasn't using million-dollar words or trying to show me how much she knew, or, I'm in the business 40 years, I know more than you. No, she just answered questions. It built up trust, and after I got off the phone, I said to my wife, I like her, I trust her, and if she provides the information she says she will, I'm ready to go ahead with the deal. So she made a very worthwhile sale in probably 12 minutes if she lives up to what she promised, if she sends me the follow-up paperwork.
And what you described, we come back to demystifying sales. You don't have to be this weird, sleazy, slimy persona. You need to be someone who cares about the person in front of you. You care about the prospect. You care about hearing what's important to them. And you're curious. You want to know. You want to understand. You're not manipulating. You're not asking the questions just so you can get them to buy. You're asking because you really want to serve them. And that's the key. Jesus came to serve. And when we take that servant mentality and apply it to everything we do, it makes sales go so much smoother. Because as you just described, Bill, you could feel that she wasn't trying to get something from you. She was trying to help you.
Exactly.
Help you make a good decision for yourself. That's the other thing. She wasn't trying to decide for you. Oh, I think this will be great for you, say many salespeople. And as soon as you hear that, even though it might be great for you, it causes the defensive shields to go up because they're now telling you what's good for you. And that causes rebellion.
That's a perfect example. When you say the defensive shields, that almost sounds like the name of another book that you'll probably write someday, because that's just what would go up. And I was ready for a battle, and I was getting my battle position ready, so to speak. And when she came across just like a regular person, as if I was talking to a neighbor about buying the plant in front of her house, or you as the little girl selling the potholders or rings or whatever it was, that's the way I felt. And I said, this is a real person. She's not trying to force my hand into it. I'm sure she has other buyers. If I buy, great. If not, someone else will. Deb, something you write in your book, and I found this different. If I go into a store, they say, "Just a second, we'll get a representative to come over and talk to you," or they'll say, "Will an associate please come to counter number 3?" Sometimes they're called partners, sometimes they're called members, but you know what I'm getting at. Yet you say salespeople should put sales right on their card. That seems to be very different. Why is that?
Honest. It's honest. I mean, people don't put sales because they don't want to be associated with a negative stereotype. But the problem is, as soon as they open their mouth and it's obvious that they're there to sell something, the buyer already knows you're in sales. So why not cut to the chase and just say, "I'm in sales"?
Makes sense.
Right?
Now,
Just be honest.
I guess one of the biggest things most of us, maybe we don't even verbalize this, but I know you mentioned in your book, and I think we would admit it if someone said it. One of the things we, fear about sales is rejection. I don't think anybody's going to sell to everybody they try to sell to, or even a high percentage. Probably if you could sell, 1 out of 20, you'd probably be among the highest successful salespeople, I guess, in the world. What causes this, and how can we get over this fear of rejection? Do you have a magic tonic?
Great question. It starts with understanding who you are, that you have value, not because you made a sale, but because of who you are. So when your value is measured by standards that have nothing to do with your vocation, nothing to do with what you do, it's your human being. You have value as a human being before you did anything. So separating those two is where we start to have the ability to not be wrapped up in that fear of rejection. Because I, as a person, whether I make the sale or not, I'm still a good person. I still have value. I still have talent that I bring to the world around me. And so if you say no, okay, it didn't work out. But here's the thing. You're not just saying no because I pushed all the wrong buttons. You're not saying no because I offended you, so you had to put the defensive shields up. I make sure that as a good salesperson, I'm qualifying your need. And if you're telling me no, it's because you and I together have figured out that it's not a good fit. So naturally, you should say no. And I can feel good about you telling me no because I helped you make the right decision.
Deb, it's the right decision to have you on the show today. We want our audience to know our guest has been Deb Brown Maher. The spelling of her last name is Maher. The book is Sell Like Jesus. Deb, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun. We want our audience to know you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at this same time when we will continue our journey to success.